Welcome to episode 133 of the Brainy Business, Understanding the Psychology of Why People Buy. Today's episode is showcasing the top content from the Brainy Business in 2020. Ready? Let's get started.
You are listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, where we dig into the psychology of why people buy and help you incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Now here's your host, Melina Palmer.
Hello, and Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Melina Palmer, and I want to welcome you to the Brainy Business Podcast. While 2020 was nowhere near the year any of us were expecting it to be, I'm always looking for silver linings. So it seemed worth taking the time to celebrate the top content and accomplishments here at the Brainy Business over the past year, just like I did last year. In 2020, I finished my book, which comes out in the first half of 2021, and I'm so excited to be able to talk more about it soon. There are links in the show notes, so you can be on the list to hear about it first as soon as the big pre-sale push begins. I was also a guest 2 separate times on New Day Northwest, a Seattle area afternoon talk show on the NBC affiliate here. The Brainy Business won Best YouTube Channel in Behavioral Science from reader votes via Habit Weekly, which was such a huge honor. And I also started teaching applied behavioral economics through Texas A&M University for the Certificate in Applied Behavioral Economics, which also launched in 2020. As of the time of this recording, we've had 1 cohort start already in the fall, and if you're interested, there's still time to join us for January classes, which begin on January 18th, 2021. The first group gave rave reviews of the Foundations in Behavioral Economics class, which I will be teaching again in January. I'm also teaching Interpersonal Communication and Change Management, which is one of the other core courses in the certificate. And Will Leach will be teaching a behavioral marketing class that I know everyone is very excited about. There are links to learn more about and apply for the certificate program, to connect on social media, and check out the award-winning YouTube channel. Watch those TV interviews and get links to all the top content you're going to hear about on today's show within the show notes for the episode, which you'll find in the app you're listening to or at thebrainybusiness.com/133. And to make it easy, so you don't feel like you have to frantically write down episode numbers and try to remember all the ones you want to go back and check out after this one, there's also a link in there to a blog post I wrote with the full lists, so you can easily use direct links and get all the information that way. Of course, for all you listeners who are already on the Brainy Business list, that worksheet is waiting for you in your inbox already, along with the email you get from me each Friday. Not on the list yet? Simply download any freebie, including the one for this episode, and you'll be automatically added. Those in the States can always text the word Brainy, BRAINY, to 33777 as well. Once you send that text or download that first freebie, you get access to the super secret subscribers page with more than 50 freebies and more all the time as a thank you. And before I dig into the top content, I want to take a moment to thank you all for listening, subscribing, sharing, connecting on social media, reaching out to let me know your wins and the behavioral economics concepts you've applied in your own businesses this year. These are some of my very favorite messages to get. I truly love hearing from you, so please continue to reach out. In 2020, I had the honor of listeners reaching out from all over the world via LinkedIn, Instagram, or email. Wherever you are, if you love the podcast and behavioral economics, please do reach out through your favorite social app to let me know who you are. I love connecting with each of you, and it really is me responding. I read all my emails and all those social posts and love to connect with you all. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as The Brainy Biz. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, both as myself, Melina Palmer, or you can follow the Brainy Business page. There are links in the show notes to make it easy to get to anywhere that works best for you. On these top content episodes, I love to talk about the top countries with downloads as well. The top 7 remain the same since last year's Best Of episode, with the US having the most downloads, not surprisingly, which is followed by the UK, Canada, Australia, India, Germany, and Brazil at number 7. And then we have some new additions. Israel joins the list as the country with the 8th most downloads of 2020. Maybe that has something to do with Kolu and the interview I did with them earlier in the year. That's followed by Mexico at number 9 and Spain rounding out our top 10. I also want to give a shout out to numbers 11 through 19, which has representation across 4 continents. Coming in at number 11 is the Netherlands, followed by Ireland, Denmark, Sweden, South Africa, Taiwan, Singapore, New Zealand, France, and Switzerland. Thank you all from every country you're listening from. I appreciate you all so much. And because the bulk of the downloads are here in the US, I want to acknowledge the top 10 states as well. There has been some shifting since last year, and we have a couple new states breaking into the top 10. Thank you, New Jersey, for all your downloads in 2020, and congrats on that number 10 spot. That's followed by Georgia at number 9, then Illinois, Ohio, another newcomer to the top 10, Florida, Virginia, and New York at number 4. And there's always been a little bit of a rivalry, at least in the minds of Texas A&M University, of really trying to get the state of Texas to be the number 1 state with downloads. And it's always been number 3, pretty much, I think, every time that I've done these countdowns. And so for the first time, congratulations to Texas. You officially surpassed the home state of Washington, which came in at number 3. Texas is the second most downloads, coming in behind California, which, again, as has always been the case, continues to be the number 1 state with the most downloads. Thank you again to everyone who's listening wherever you are. I would love to connect and learn more about you, so please do share where you're listening from and where we hang out on social media, where you can find me as the Brainy Biz. All right, let's talk top content. First, I'm going to tell you about the top 10 downloaded episodes of this year, which is going to be followed by the top 10 downloads of all time. It ends up being a pretty robust list because all the top downloaded episodes from 2020 came out within this past year. But only 3 of those show up on the top downloaded episodes of all time, as the other 7 came out in 2018 or 2019. So without further ado, let's start it off with that 10th most downloaded episode of 2020, which was number 99 on bike shedding. I know this was an incredibly popular episode and one I got a lot of emails, social tags, shares, and comments about. It really resonated with people. I think because bike shedding is such an important concept and it's something easy to understand, but it's really difficult to spot. It's basically impossible when you don't know what it is. Bike shedding is constantly keeping people spinning their wheels and not making progress on goals. This episode and its very important cousin, number 114 on planning fallacy, which didn't make the top 10, have great tips outlined with custom worksheets you can use to spot and tackle both bike shedding and planning fallacy to smash through all your goals in 2021. And as this episode is being released on January 1st, a day of resolutions for many, it seems very fitting to keep that in mind, to tackle and make sure you're looking at those goals in the right way to avoid bike shedding and to plan properly to be able to achieve them and not be a victim to Quitter's Day, which is January 19th. That is the day that most everyone has given up on their resolutions. And I don't want that for you. So check out those episodes on bike shedding and planning fallacy to be able to really crush those 2021 goals and resolutions. The 9th most downloaded episode of the year was number 84, How to Stack and Bundle Products and Services so they're most appealing to potential customers. And I gotta say, it doesn't surprise me that this one made it into the top 10 of the year. It is something I get asked about all the time. It's constantly brought up by members of the Be Thoughtful Revolution. And when I'm speaking at events or people are reaching out, just looking for those ways to be able to present an offer so it's most likely to be chosen by people. It's such a critical and important part of business. And there really is a science to the way that you can present this information. And so that episode number 84 is one that I just love to talk about that concept. I talk about it all the time, and I very much expect that there will be more discussion about topics like that coming into 2021. Next, in at number 8 is episode 87, which was on social proof and how to use herding to boost engagement and sales. Social proof is one of those really core concepts that was introduced to us by Robert Cialdini, a fantastic researcher, professor. He's got amazing books that I've talked about on the show many times before. And just being able to use the power of other people and knowing that we as a herding species are looking for the wisdom of the crowd and seeing what other people are doing to help us decide what is a really good choice. If you or someone you know believes that you're not influenced by the number of reviews something has or the stars on Amazon or on a podcast, it just isn't true. Everyone is really influenced by this social proof. And that episode number 87 gives you tips on ways to use it in your own business so you can encourage more people to buy your great products and services. Number 7 on the list was the very first episode of 2020, episode number 81, How to Finally Change Your Behavior So It Sticks. This very much goes in line with the bike shedding planning fallacy discussion I was having just a minute ago from that number 10 episode on the list. And it's such an important thing as you think about resolutions. If you haven't yet listened to episode 81, now is a really great time to be looking at all the things you're wanting to do differently this year. And it's a very common thing. We do have a fresh start effect, which makes it so when we see that it's the beginning of a month or even a week, or especially at the beginning of a year, we are looking for opportunities to have that fresh start, to change our behavior, to make a difference, to be better than we were before. And so the beginning of a year like this, whether we like it or not, is a time where our brains are already looking at how to have that fresh start. So you might as well use it to your advantage and change your behavior for the better. Number 6 is the first interview to make an appearance on the list, which is with author Brian Ahern on how to ethically influence people, which was episode 104. I already talked a little bit about Robert Cialdini on that social proof episode, and Brian Ahern is one of only a very select few people who has been personally trained by Cialdini to be able to train on his methods. He's such a fantastic guy. I just love talking with him and all the behind the scenes chats and everything. He's really amazing, a wealth of information. And he has one of my very favorite quotes in his book to explain relativity, which is paraphrased from Shakespeare. But when talking about relativity, where he says, nothing is high or low, but comparing makes it so. That is something I always think of when I think of Brian. He also has that amazing Post-it example, and I believe was one of the first people I heard talk about ending your emails on a question because of the way that it can change the reaction that someone has, which is something I do constantly every single day. And I had heard him talking about that where he was a guest on someone else's podcast long before we ever got introduced to each other, and he agreed to come on this show. Again, he's a wealth of information and such a nice guy. If you haven't yet listened to episode 104, it deserves to be number 6. And there's a lot of value from his book as well, which I highly recommend. And I believe I heard he might have another book coming out soon, so maybe we will see him again in 2021. The 5th most downloaded episode of the year was also an interview. This one with Dan Ariely, where we discussed Shape-A, the numberless scale. I love this episode for many reasons, not the least of which that it was a huge honor to be able to interview Dan and to have him on the show. And I also really enjoyed talking with him about something different than what you hear other people ask him about. You know, we weren't talking about the standard case studies from his books or things like that, but a project that he was really integral in creating and changing the way that people are able to think about health and losing weight, and is really making an impact in people's lives. And I think it was really telling that people enjoyed this as well, as it was named a top podcast episode of the first half of the year by Habit Weekly. They only called out, I think, 5 episodes from all the content of all the behavioral science podcasts. And this single episode where I interviewed Dan Ariely to talk about Shape-A in episode 101 made their top episodes list. And so it's no surprise that it was the 5th most downloaded episode of 2020. On to number 4, which was episode 91 on the coronavirus and how the human brain responds to pandemics. It's amazing how much has changed since that episode went live on March 13th. It's funny. I remember at the time when I was thinking about if I should do something about coronavirus and thinking that I may have missed the boat and it was a little bit late to be talking about things as people had been discussing it, in the news for a couple of weeks at that point, and I wasn't really sure what was going to be happening, and I don't think any of us really knew what was to come. The day that episode went live, so obviously I recorded it in advance, but that was the same day that here in Washington State, our governor announced that all schools would be closing. And so a lot changed after that episode came out. But I was really intentional in creating the content to not talk so specifically about the coronavirus as much as a pandemic in general and the change that was coming and how that would be impacting our brains and the way we would react to limits on items and the fear of not being able to take care of our families and not knowing what was happening. And that was an episode that I know really resonated with people and helped to, at least for some, bring comfort in understanding that the reactions they were having in their brains, that, the way that they were responding or what was happening or what they were seeing on the news or from their friends was not surprising, but was somewhat predictable, and to understand how they could then overcome that behavior. So I know that episode did a lot of what was intended in helping people to understand what was happening in their own brains so they could change the behavior that they wanted to and be able to respond in a way that they could feel better about than maybe the natural reactions that they had been seeing very early on. And now we enter the top 3 most downloaded episodes of 2020. The 3rd most downloaded episode was number 102 on confirmation bias. And this is very much in that realm of the brain getting what it expects and knowing that when you are looking for something, you're going to find it, whatever it is. And so this can be used both for positive or for negative. I'm also not surprised to see this in the top 3 as I was a guest on Kwame Christian's show, Negotiate Anything, which is the number 1 negotiation podcast in the world, has millions of downloads, really, really amazing. And he brought me on after he was a guest here on the Brainy Business to talk about confirmation bias specifically and how it works and ways to think about it when you are having negotiations and things along those lines. And so with such a large audience he has there, I'm not surprised that we saw so many downloads on confirmation bias here at the Brainy Business. So thank you again to Kwame and any of the listeners here who found me through the Negotiate Anything podcast. Love to have you. The 2nd most downloaded show of the year was number 83, How to Organize Your Brain with Behavioral Economics. In this episode, I gave some of my top tips and favorite tools that I use to keep my brain organized. That includes Gantt charts and Trello boards, as well as my time timer and all sorts of other little tips and tidbits. If you haven't listened to that one, number 83, highly recommend it. And it has a really good worksheet as well that shows you all those little tips so you can get those tools and tricks for yourself and to have a more organized and efficient brain as you go into 2021. All right. Now, without further ado, the most downloaded episode of 2020 was number 86, a behavioral economics analysis of Peloton. I'm so excited to see that this one made it to be the number 1 most downloaded episode of the year. It's funny, I wasn't really planning to do that episode. And then we got one and we're using it. And it was such an interesting experience to go through. And I still love our Peloton and the app and all the great stuff they have within it. And so it's something I have people talk to me about all the time and bring up. I think it's a known enough brand, but not so much that there's tons and tons of content out there, while the episode about Starbucks and Costco have made some of the top 10 lists in the past. This one, I think, just really resonated maybe as people were looking to get Peloton bikes and to use that equipment when they couldn't go to the gym. I think it just ended up being a really well-timed episode. And I'm also very much aware that this was the only company analysis episode that I ended up doing in 2020, and it was the most downloaded of the year. I was originally planning to do more than that. Like I said, I had done a couple in 2019. They're always really popular episodes, but something felt off about talking about the businesses during the pandemic when they were maybe shut down or they had a big shift in behavior. And I wanted to see how that all was going to come together. But looking back, I think if I could have changed something about the content this year, I would have done more of those company analysis episodes. So for 2021, I am planning to bring those back into the mix, to do more of those because it's very clear that you all love them. If you have a company that you would be interested in hearing about, definitely send me an email or let me know on social media who you would like a behavioral economics analysis of. I've had requests in the past for Disney, Harley-Davidson, Amazon, and all sorts of other just really amazing brands that I can't wait to dig into. So I will be talking about them into the future. Don't know how many will be done in 2021, but we'll definitely have some of these. And again, if you have a special request of one that you want to come up first or early on, definitely let me know on social media, where you can find me everywhere as the Brainy Biz. All right, so that was the top 10 of all the downloads that came in between January 1st and date of recording, so almost December 31st of 2020. And so now when we look at all time, so since the podcast came out in July of 2018 until today, and I did pull these on the same day I'm recording to make sure that they were all as accurate as I could get, the top 10 episodes most downloaded of all time. As I said, only 3 that were on that past list made it onto the top 10 of all time list. The first, number 10, was on confirmation bias, which was episode 102, which I just talked about, so I won't dig into it again. And then number 9 is one that wasn't on that list. So let's kick it off with number 9 on selective attention biases, which was episode number 50. This was part of a series I did on all the biases, it was called. It was split up amongst 8 different episodes where I broke down over 200 different biases into categories that I thought made sense for your purposes. The first one was about how we look at ourselves. I also talked about groups and other people, this selective attention, lazy brains, why we don't like math, all sorts of memory biases, why we love novelty and story. And this one on selective attention was really popular, clearly, as it is the number 9 most downloaded episode of all time, episode 50. If you haven't checked it out or any of the others in the series, I really do recommend them. They're kind of a rapid fire, very much like this episode, actually, where in some of the other episodes, if I'm talking about like that one on confirmation bias, it's just really digging deep on a specific concept. Whereas those biases episodes were listing off 10, 20 different concepts at a time, how they worked, how they were different from each other, how they matter to you, and just really kind of boom, boom, boom through them. It was a fun series to do. And I'm glad that it made it into the top 10 because it's so different than what's usually on the show. So it's nice to see that some of those pop into the most downloaded content. Number 8 was the episode on game theory, which was episode 62. In this episode, I got to talk about how life and business are a game and figuring out if you know the rules. And in reality, our brains, even though we should be playing by the rules, we don't really know what's going on, and we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot more often than we realize. But understanding how the game works can make a really big difference in helping you to win more often than you would otherwise. One of my favorite lines and lessons from this is looking at champions at games, like whether it's poker, high stakes, and that most people are playing not to lose. And that is not a great strategy. Those who understand game theory need to be playing to win. And it's a very different setup than playing not to lose. You play very differently. And those who are playing to win often do. And so understanding more about that difference and how you can apply that into your life and business, I highly recommend checking out episode 62 on game theory. Coming in at number 7 was episode 5, which is our first throwback to 2018, way back. This is the truth about pricing. One of the most common things that I speak on, and definitely throughout 2020. So I'm not surprised that it still has a really great presence on this top 10 list downloads of all time, as I did several presentations on this virtually in 2020. And so being able to understand how everything that happens before the price matters more than the price itself. I have tons of content on pricing strategy throughout the entire podcast, and I just love that this one continues to be on the top 10 as it is the one that started it all. Number 6 is How to Organize Your Brain with Behavioral Economics, which was number 83, the first episode of 2020. So I'm not going to talk about that again because it was on the last list. And that brings us to number 5, which was the episode on color theory. I really enjoyed researching this episode as a marketer and brand strategist and someone who's creating ads and imagery. Being able to really dig in on color and finding and being able to share with everybody the one thing that matters more than anything else when it comes to color in this episode number 61. I get asked about stuff with colors all the time, and being able to put that into an episode that's able to show how, picking the right color is earning Google an extra $200 million a year reportedly on the color of links that they choose, and thinking about buttons and using good contrast and how it all makes a really big difference. It is a fascinating thing to think about how the tiniest difference in a shade can make such a big difference. And I love always talking about the small changes that can make a really big difference. And color is a way that you can really make impact in a way that doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but understanding what's happening within the brain, why you would be doing it, and when you want to use one color over another is a really important thing to be keeping in mind, whether you're creating a brand or just working on a very simple email or a single ad. It's just really important to understand color and how it can make a difference. Even, for charts that you're creating, if you aren't in the marketing department, it matters for everyone and can make a really big difference. So that episode on color theory, episode 61, I still recommend all the time to people because they're constantly asking about color. So really love that one. Number 4 was that episode on Peloton, so we don't have to talk about it again. Followed by number 3, which was another behavioral economics analysis, this one on Starbucks, which was episode 73, the third most downloaded episode of all time on the Brainy Business podcast. I love Starbucks. I'm in Starbucks country here in the greater Seattle area. And so being able to talk about how they use scarcity and loss aversion and framing and so many other concepts. This was one of my favorite episodes to create because Starbucks is near and dear to my heart. So being able to talk about them and have that be such a popular episode, it warms my heart like a chai tea latte. All right. And the top 2 episodes continue to always be number 1 and number 2, the first 2 episodes of the show in that order. So episode 2, the top 5 wording mistakes businesses make, is the second most downloaded episode. And episode 1, Unlocking the Secrets of the Brain, is the first most downloaded episode of the show. And that makes a lot of sense. As I said, I hear from listeners all the time, and I find that people fall into 2 camps. You get some people who find a new show and decide that they are going to listen in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they won't skip. They are just binging from the beginning to end, even though these episodes don't have to be listened to that way. There are some people that want to go through that methodically and listen to them in order, and that makes sense that they listen to 1 and 2 and they go through that way. I think for other people, you decide you're going to skip around, but it's still common to go back to the beginning and listen to those foundations where it started. They may be the first that are recommended in your app when you're pulling up the show. And so to start there, realize you like it, and then start hopping around, it makes sense that they have the most downloads of all time. And I pretty much expect that it's going to continue to go that way, but we'll see what 2021 has in store. With 133 episodes now, there's so much great content in the back catalog that didn't make the top 10 list. Like that series on choice architecture and nudging, and so many wonderful interviews and conversations with people. I really love talking to Steve Wendell and to Wendy Wood, and being able to introduce everyone to the Global Association of Applied Behavioral Scientists, which launched this year in the fall. Just so many great things that I've been able to do and talk about on the show. So I do want you to remember that you can always find a full list of all the episodes at any time by going to thebrainybusiness.com/podcast. It's updated each week as the new episode comes out, and it's a great reference to scroll through and see all the existing episodes that you can choose from, find those you haven't listened to yet, and be able to see the art, check out all the show notes and their freebie worksheets, all sorts of great stuff, again, at thebrainybusiness.com/podcast. As I said, in 2021, I'm definitely planning to do some of those company analysis episodes because I know that they were very popular and that people have asked for them. So that's going to be happening. I'm also going to continue to do interviews. We have some very exciting ones coming up that I know you're all going to love, and definitely mixing in those behavioral economics foundations with their worksheets that everyone loves to get, and some of those compilation type episodes like the stacking and bundling podcasts or those top 5 wording mistakes businesses make. Just going to be a lot more of the content that you already know and love. Though I will say, if you do have a concept or a style or something that you think would be fun to have on the show that you haven't heard before and wish I would do, at any time, reach out to me on social media or send me an email with that suggestion, and I would love to add it into the mix of possible ways to do more episodes because, again, I make the show for you, the content's for you, and I want to continually work to make it easy for you to find and use and implement and provide the insights and information that you're interested in. So as always, please do let me know, and I would love to include that in 2021. And as I promised, this is about the top content from the Brainy Business, which doesn't just include the podcast. As many of you know, I also write for Inc. magazine and Inc.com. And so I want to share the top 10 most downloaded articles that I have written for Inc. magazine. As I already said, there's a link in the show notes to a blog post that is going to have all the links out so you can get to the specific episodes in those top 10s, as well as to these top 10 articles from Inc. for everyone who wants to go check them out. They are all 800 words or less. They're quick and easy reads and a lot of fun. For these ones, their titles are pretty self-explanatory, so I'm just going to go quick through the list with maybe a little tidbit here or there. So number 10 most read article from Inc. is called "The Font Size on Your Price Tags Could Be Reducing Your Sales by 28%. Here's how to fix it." This is a little bit about framing and an amazing trick that almost everyone gets wrong in the way we think it should be. A really great, simple example in a shift in font size that can make a huge difference. Number 9 is called "Forget Brainstorming, Try Question Storming." You all know I love me some questions. I love question storming. It's one of my favorite things to talk about and to teach in those classes at Texas A&M and with my direct clients. It is always a favorite, really well received, a really fun and useful tool. If you want a little bit of a primer in how it works, do check out that article on question storming. Number 8 on the list is called "Why You Hate Seeing Your Face in Video Meetings." This article went live on April 21st, and you can imagine this is right about 1 month into the pandemic. People are having to get used to Zoom and something that they are not comfortable with and are having a hard time with and realizing they're going to have to do more and more of. So being able to share why our brains are kind of wired to hate that and how you can make some simple tweaks so that it's not going to bother you as much, I think was very helpful for people, which is why it's the 8th most popular article I've written for Inc. Number 7, which came out right at the end of 2019, is called "These 5 Simple Concepts of Behavioral Economics Can Drastically Improve Your Marketing Efforts." This is basically what I talk about all the time. It's my top 5 most important concepts that I would talk about. I know priming and framing are on there, just some that are really important and can make a big difference without having to cost a lot of money. Number 6 is called "Still Trying to Multitask: How to Make More Time for Deep Work." This one was part of a series that the editors asked if I would be willing to write about. A really fun one, and it's super, super, super short. I think it's 300 words or something. I mean, just a quick little blip, a really simple, easy, and important article about deep work, which makes a really big difference in productivity, especially when we're at home and there's so many things to be working on. Number 5 is called "This Simple Framework Can Help You Sell More of Anything." And this is very much akin to the product stacking and bundling. It is also similar to the truth about pricing. It's something I do with all of my clients. It's foundational for the pricing course you can get from the Brainy Business, like really, really all important on how you present information and how that can help you sell more and encourage people to buy the right things for them. Number 4, which came out also at the end of 2019, is called "Why You Should Ditch Your Flimsy Paper Business Cards Right Now." This is talking about the power of touch and how that association is made within our brains. I've been very interested to see how business cards may shift after the pandemic, and if we have less in-person interaction, are people going to be even using them anymore? But the tips and insights from this article are still very important for anything that you're creating for your business. If you send out postcards or your letterhead or the way that you wrap your shipped items, if you're sending gifts or products, it's really important to be thinking about the message that's being conveyed from the feel of those items. Number 3, which is the first post I ever wrote for Inc., is called "One Simple Brain Trick That Can Help You Overcome Self-Doubt Forever." And it's very much kind of a primer on behavioral economics. The second most read article is called "Feeling Unproductive: This Brain Bias Could Be to Blame." And this really helps bring it all full circle, as, spoiler alert, it's talking about bike shedding, which was the 10th most downloaded episode of 2020. And so really, again, bike shedding is one of those concepts that really resonated with everyone when I've been talking about it this year. And I think will continue to do so into the future. And now it's time to close the episode on the top content of 2020 with the most read article of all time that I've written for Inc., which is called "A Starbucks Barista Asked Me This One Simple Question, and Using It May Be a Great Way to Boost Your Sales." This article is about framing and breaking free of the way we've always done things. Think of the questions you're asked all the time, every day, And the things you ask other people. Does it actually encourage them to think and respond, or is it a go with emotions kind of question? When ordering from any drive-thru, you probably get asked the anything else question, and you can instinctively respond, nope, without much conscious thought. It doesn't open up the conversation at all or encourage people to get more from you. Getting people to decide to buy from you is much more difficult than getting them to buy more things from you once they're in the purchasing mindset. So it's easier to get people to add on things than to get them to buy initially. Asking a slightly different question can move the interaction in a much different direction. In this case, after I ordered my drink, the barista asked, "And what else sounds delicious today?" Which is a different question entirely and opens up the conversation. I give some examples of how to use this in your business and why framing works so well in this article, which is linked for you in the show notes, along with everything else I talked about today at thebrainybusiness.com/133. There's so much to learn and implement. I hope this episode opened your eyes to some exciting content from the Brainy Business you may have missed or want to just go revisit. As I said at the top of the show, there are a lot of episodes and articles linked in the show notes this week. If there was ever a time to check them out for easy reference to past content, this is it. Whether you want to be reminded where to pick up listening, the notes are chunked out by point down to the second where I start talking about a concept or idea, or if you want an easy link to read or listen to content, or to join the next virtual cohort of students for the Certificate in Applied Behavioral Economics at Texas A&M University, it's all easy for you in the show notes, both within the app you're listening to and at thebrainybusiness.com/133. I know time was stretched thin during 2020, and you had to choose between all sorts of content you used to consume regularly. Maybe it was on your commute to work that went away, or while getting ready in the morning, which was significantly reduced, or at the gym, which you couldn't visit anymore. It means a lot to me that you chose to keep the Brainy Business in the mix. Whoever you are and wherever you are in the world, thank you again for listening, subscribing, sharing, rating, and reviewing the Brainy Business podcast. I appreciate you all and can't wait to see what 2021 has in store. And just like that, episode 133 on the best of the Brainy Business in 2020 is done. Next week is an unbelievably fun conversation with Richard Chataway, CEO of BVA Nudge Unit UK and author of the fantastic book, The Behavior Business. It's going to be so much fun. You don't want to miss it. Until then, thanks again for listening and learning with me. And remember to be thoughtful.
Thank you for listening to the Brainy Business Podcast. Molina offers virtual strategy sessions, workshops, and other services to help businesses be more brain-friendly. For more free resources, visit thebrainybusiness.com.